probably actually load it with asbestos, but anyways, I'm just like digging in there. And hey there, and welcome to Matt's Garage and Car Stories with Matt. Well, today's story actually focuses on A40 Austins, and my experience with A40 Austins actually started as a result of my owning the 57 Plymouth that I mentioned in a previous story, because I was always on the lookout for parts for that car, and I came across a 1960 Plymouth Belvedere in a farmer's field, and there was a whole bunch of cars around it. It wasn't just that car. So I had actually struck a deal to buy that car just for parts, and I took a bunch of parts off of it that were the same as on the 57, plus a bunch of parts that I was going to sell. And then, you know, the guy was really reasonable to deal with on that vehicle, so I figured I'd look at the other vehicles around the property, and there was some really, this was kind of like a swampy area where they had just put junk in this. I guess this one farm family had been putting junk there for almost 100 years, and so there was like vehicles there that dated back to like the 20s, like that old truck on the Beverly Hillbillies with the little round windshield and stuff. They literally had one of those old trucks on this property, and they had, you know, butter churns and all sorts of you know, different antiques just laying around in little outbuildings out there, and they had a bunch of late 40s Plymouth coupes, and they also had a 1950 A40 Austin, which was very complete and in good condition, aside from the engine was missing the cylinder head. And the car had a license plate on it that was from 1958, so that indicated how long it could have been sitting there. I mean, the windows were all gone, but the metal was really solid, and you know, all the doors opened and closed on it, and all the hubcaps were there, and all the little chrome bits were there, and you know, everything was, you know, pretty well untouched from when it had been parked there, aside from the missing engine parts, which were probably related to why it was parked. But anyways, I was able to buy that whole car for, you know, $50, and I towed it home in the middle of winter with the little 88 Nissan truck. You probably noticed that similarity in all my stories, that truck towed home so many of my early project cars. And so I actually towed it home solo, and the car had a seized up wheel, and I remember I just put the tires were all flat on it, of course, so I had some rims off of like an old Mazda 323 or something with decent tires on them, so I just re-drilled them to fit on the Austin, and then towed it home that way. And so the one tire was dragging the whole way, and it blew out by the time I got home, like this, dragging it on the gravel back road. So anyways, that was okay. I still made it home without incident, and started cleaning up the car, and actually got that wheel unlocked. It was mostly just packed with dirt and frozen up because it was winter time when I pulled it home. And so the brakes actually worked. Like, I couldn't believe that when I got the wheel unstuck. The brake pedal had full pedal pressure still, and I pushed the car down the driveway, and then, you know, jumped in it and hit the brakes, and you could literally skid the tires. The brakes worked. It was amazing. And as I said, the metal was really solid and stuff, so I started, you know, sandblasting the car and getting it ready for primer and stuff. But in the meantime, I was looking for some parts. There was mainly the engine parts. I had thought about, you know, modifying it and putting like a different engine in it and hot rodding it a bit, but I didn't really have the tools or the expertise at the time to do that kind of thing, so I was looking for original parts to try and put it back to original. And forever, for as long as I can remember, in Saskatoon on 8th Street there was an A40 Austin sitting there was like a whole bunch of apartment buildings, and then there was this little old house sitting off on its own sort of thing, kind of untouched by time, and you could tell that the area had just grown up around this house. And, the car was parked in the backyard of the house, all sunk down into the yard, and this was like what they'd call like a tract home, like the prefab homes that they built right after the war. And so I knocked on the door of that house one day, that little house, and this took quite a while but I could hear some noise in there, so I just waited. And this old guy comes to the door, and he had like a blanket across the door and everything to seal off the doorway, so he like just pulls off back the blanket and peeks around the blanket at me, and he's got an oxygen hose in his nose and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he's a little bit gruff old guy, and he's like, "What do you want?" and stuff, and well, I was wondering about that old car in your backyard, the Austin. And he kind of loosened up when I said that, and he invited me in, and just it smelled so strong of tobacco in that house that it was just like you could instantly start to taste it in your mouth, the nicotine. And but anyways, this guy, he just was looking for somebody to talk to, basically. So, and he loved his Austin, so he just starts talking to me about this, and I think my brother had come along with me, I'm not sure. Seemed to recall somebody was with me. But anyways, I start showing him pictures of my Austin and telling him about it and everything, and he got all excited about it, and he's like, "Well, I have another one in the garage." He says, I bought one brand new when I came back from the war. And he says, I've had it in the garage ever since, and I just, take it out on Sundays and drive it type thing. And it turned out this guy was basically a total recluse, a hermit. He had like a healthcare aide that came once a week. She may have been related to him, actually, I'm not sure. And that was it. That was his only contact with the outside world. I believe she brought him groceries and stuff. And he had been married, but his wife had passed. I mean, he was in his 90s at this point. I believe he was 91. And he had a son, but his son had very little to do with him at this point, unfortunately. And so he was just a lonely old man, and I showed an interest in these cars. He shared an interest in, and he right away was on board with me putting this old Austin back together and wanted to help me out. And so he's like, "Come with me," and he starts walking across the house and over to the basement stairway, and dragging this oxygen hose with him. And we get about halfway down the stairs, and his oxygen line wouldn't reach anymore. And he pulls it out and flicks it to the side, and he's like, "I don't need that, that's okay." And, he starts gasping right away, and I'm like, holy, I was, scared about this, but he assured me he was fine, but, we're going down the steps into the basement, and when we get down into the basement, it's all lined with shelves in the basement, and the shelves are all full of tobacco cans, and all the tobacco cans are written on with felt markers. And then I'm looking around, and there's 3 4-cylinder engine blocks, all stripped, all the studs stripped out, just bare blocks sitting on heavy shelves along the wall in this basement. And then I look beside them, and there's 3 cylinder heads all stripped down next to the blocks. And he says, "Yeah, after I bought the other car," he says, "I started to get concerned about getting spare parts for it." So he says, "I bought 4 more Austins," and he says 3 of them I completely disassembled, and they're all here in the basement. And he showed me off in the corner. He had all the body panels for them. And these, like one of the cars he disassembled was black, and he gave me a fender off of it because one of my fenders was dented up. It's not that I couldn't have fixed it, it's just he had the fender, so he gave it to me. And you could see a reflection in this fender because, I mean, he tore this car apart in like the early 60s. It was like, you know, a 10-year-old car at the time. And so all these parts were like brand new. But I mean, he had disassembled everything like obsessively and labeled it. There wasn't like a nut screwed onto a bolt or nut screwed onto a stud. It's like you had a tobacco can and it had like, you know, cylinder head studs in it, and that's all it had in it, and it was labeled, and it was, you know, that's how everything was. And so he's like, oh, you need a cylinder head. So he pulls the cylinder head out off the shelf. He's like, there, you can have that cylinder head. And then we had to find valves, we had to find studs, you know, all this stuff to build a cylinder head. But by the time I left there that day, I had all the parts to fix my engine. And then he's like, you know, I'm never going to use all these parts now, you know, I can see that now. He says, so if you can use them, you keep coming back and getting parts off me, okay? And so I'm like, okay. And he's like, the car out back, he says, that was actually my winter car. He says, I saved that one and I used it in the winter. And he had driven it up until like the mid-70s as a winter car, and then it got really rusty, so he just kind of parked it out in the yard and left it there. And yeah, I went back another time, I remember, and I had to go into the attic that time. The whole attic was full. There was like bumpers in the attic, and of course I had to walk on the beams. You couldn't walk between the beams. So I'm sitting there like straddling all these beams and digging through the insulation. There's like that blow-in loose insulation. He had that all in his attic, which is probably actually loaded with asbestos. But anyways, I'm just like digging in there and pulling out all these like a brand new fuel cap and filler for an Austin, like, you know, all chrome, and the chrome's mint, and the little bumper guards. He had all those, and again, everything was just totally disassembled. So, you know, I kind of got all the stuff to make the car perfect, and then plus that he wanted me to take the car out back. And so I came back with a trailer. I rented a U-Haul trailer with the little 88 Nissan, and this was in the winter time, and I remember the car was like sunk to the axles. So I got a chain on the back of the car and I hooked it to the back of this U-Haul trailer, and I'm just taking like big runs at it to rip this car out of the you know, ground it was sunk into, and got it pulled out. And it was kind of funny because like this whole setup was a little sketch, and this was like a busy area, and I was like blocking the whole alley off in Saskatoon. I'm just like a 16-year-old kid, and all these, you know, delivery vehicles are coming along and getting annoyed at me and stuff, and I'm just like, you know, whatever. So I'm rushing trying to get this thing loaded up, and really didn't have the equipment I needed to do it or anything, but I got it pulled out of the yard and then, you know, start coming along it onto the trailer. But it's such a narrow car for the trailer. It was like a car hauler trailer, so it's like an open deck in the middle with just ramps on the side, and the car would barely fit on the ramps. And then it's got 4 flat tires, and, you know, there's snow on the ground. And so anyways, I ended up, one of the front wheels fell off the ramp when I was about halfway onto the deck and fell down into the middle. And I actually had a guy from the nearby apartment building who was out having a smoke, so he came over and helped me, and we were trying to like jack this wheel back up and get it on the deck and pull it over. But, you know, as I said, there's all these people waiting on me and stuff. So in the end, you know, I look under the trailer, and the wheel's hanging down, but it's touching some of the bracing underneath the deck and stuff. So I decided to just strap it down as it was, with 3 wheels on the deck and 1 hanging down, and I pulled it home like that. And anyways, from there I actually continued. I pulled the engine out of the Austin and got it all tore down and started, building that together and everything. And I did a lot of body work on it and stuff. But it ended up actually that I was moving to Alberta. And so I had to sell most of my cars. I actually brought a few with me when I moved. But this was when I was, living in Saskatchewan, trying to move to Alberta. So that car ended up going up for sale. And I made sure, since this old guy was so generous, I didn't want to profit from that or anything. I wanted to, his dream was for my car to get restored, and that's why he was giving me the parts. And so, I stuck with that plan, and I made sure that car went to a home where it was getting restored. The guy had the money and the resources, and he was 100% going to restore it. And I only sold it to him for $600. Both cars, all the parts. It was worth a lot more. But, I got rid of it, and I didn't feel guilty as a result, because I just, kind of, paid it forward, so to speak. And that was the last I heard of it, but I can assume that the car was all restored in the end and probably in pristine condition by now. It was a very cool car, and I kind of have a thing for small cars and micro cars and stuff, so I can't say I don't miss it, but I think I did the right move. Now the funny part of it is after I got this car, and I actually ran across another rare British car and ended up with that as well. And so I had a couple British cars, so I joined the Saskatoon British Car Club, which is a really friendly little club, and really enjoyed being part of it. But the funny part is when I told them this story and showed them the picture of the Austin, they're like, that's the Austin from H Street? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, the one in the backyard of the old man's house? I'm like, yes. Why, do you know the old man? They're like, we have been going to that old man's house. We've sent so many people there so many times. We have knocked on that door, and they're like, that old guy is so mean to us. He will not talk to us, and he wouldn't even discuss selling that car to us. They're like, how the heck did you get that car? I'm like, I don't know. The old dude's really nice. So, I did go back and visit him a few more times, even after I got the parts. But it got to a point where it was, I was only about 16 at the time, and this guy was basically dying before my eyes, so it wasn't a very uplifting experience going to visit him. And as well, as I said, the nicotine taste, days after I visited him, I could still taste the nicotine. So, I didn't go there for a while, and I kept meaning to go there, and then one day I noticed that stuff was being cleared out of the house. So clearly he had passed on, and obviously his son had come to clean up the house. I'm not even sure if that house still exists there, because as I said, the area had sort of been developed around it, and that old guy was kind of one of the few older homes in the area that had kind of held out. And as I said, it was a real time warp. Like, the house was all stuccoed and everything with the original stucco, and it was kind of neat going to visit him. But as I said, it was depressing at the same time, and he was, as I said, he was a hermit, and he had like this alternate society that he had created in his mind, and he called it the Land of It. And he said, basically, in the Land of It, anything he believed to be true was true. I remember him specifically telling me that. So that was one of his life philosophies, basically, that his beliefs were more powerful than any beliefs in the outside world, and that's why he called it the Land of It. It was his Land of It. So I don't know. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just that's what it was, and I feel like it's part of the story that I should pass that on and keep that little bit of that old guy, moving forward. He was a neat old guy, and I remember him pretty fondly. So I do hope you enjoyed this story. Thanks a lot for watching Matt's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I try to put up a car story every Sunday. And have yourself a great day.